What's up, folks? Khalid Bay. Always want to be ever mindful of the fact that when you're talking politics, you have to remember that politics are local. It's most important to be involved in your local elections. There's a local election in your city, your town, your village every single year. So we want to make sure that you stay up to date with what's going on. Let's get to it. Let's talk. Welcome to Let's Talk. I'm Khalid.
This is Rob Romeo for you.
And today we talking about the importance of our local elections, Rob.
That's right. We got primaries coming up. We're 1 month out. Our last episode, last show, we had on our election commissioner, which I hope everybody got a good flavor that this is the way elections go all over the country.
Right,
this is not just, okay, you're here, but this is the way it goes all over the country. Elections commissioners have their staff, their people that work for them. They're paid by the county taxpayers, and they're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your relatives. These people deserve your respect, and they work all day and all night to get the job done. And the system, it has checks and balances. It has both parties, sides of the equation looking at it. The candidates can have their representatives look at the vote. So it's very secure, fair, and we encourage people to participate in the local elections. They're really important right now.
That's right. That's a key thing. Not only your mayoral election here in Syracuse, obviously in New York City.
Yeah, New York City's coming up. That is going to be a sea change for the state, I think. Adams could win. I don't know. I think he's still on the ballot, right? And
yes,
I think they do a 1-2 round because there's so many candidates.
That's right.
So you got to get to the top three, and
notable candidates who I think are obviously the front runners. You have the incumbent Eric Adams, and then of course you have former Governor Cuomo.
Sure.
And then you have the public advocate Jamani Williams, who's also running for mayor.
Right. Absolutely.
So I would expect that those three.
They're huge name recognition. They got it in New York, throughout New York City.
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. People know who they are, and what they've done, and what they're probably capable of doing.
Yeah.
So they're just going to vote and see what happens. But I think it'll be a good turnout because it's going to be an exciting election, given what's happened with Adams in the last 6 months. How he's had his issues, but now he's back and here he is. I gotta say, he did do something which I want to talk to our candidates about too. Is with the police department. And I don't know how much exactly came from his administration or ground up from the police department itself in New York City, but they've created a quality of life department within the police department. And I think it's like a 311 call. So if you see something that's not violent, not life-threatening, but quality of life issue, noise, drugs, mental illness issues, you call this and you get, I think, police officers, but also social workers and other people that can come in and help. We talked about that with Tom Babylon a little bit in one of our segments.
The thing that's smart about that is it takes a lot of pressure off of the emergency 911.
Yes,
right now, Onondaga County, it's all flooded with nonviolent and
you're exactly right.
Non-emergency calls.
Yeah, how do you can't spread your resources that wide.
Right.
It's just if you have to respond to every call, you have to triage it first. So this way it kind of does. It kind of gets you into the right category where you got to go and what kind of personnel, what kind of response you have to have. But I thought they have a whole department now, quality of life department.
Yeah, I figured it's probably like peace officers and some more community service officers that doing something
like that. I watched a little bit of actually the police chief talking about it with his the person in charge of the department. But so again, those things, these local elections impact your life in where you're living more than anything else. That's you got to start with that.
That's right.
Go ahead.
So no, I'm just going to say, just to reiterate, you got to make sure you get out there and vote. Never make the assumption that your vote doesn't count. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you're talking about Syracuse, New York City, Rochester, or Charlotte, North Carolina, your mayoral race and your council races are very important.
I think now more than ever we need turnout. I mean, I don't know if you have to have been asleep for the last 6 months or more if you do not know that democracy is a thing now.
Yes.
I mean, our Constitution is talked about like every day.
Yeah.
Democracy is now a thing versus other forms of government. People are talking about it more than in my lifetime that I've ever heard. So this is really where the rubber meets the road in a democratic society. It's the local elections, and you got to get out and vote. And I think, for a party that's not in power, like in this case, the Democrats are not in power in Washington or nationally, this is like a first step to show the country how you're able to govern. If you get in, if you're a Democrat, you get a city, you get a state, and then you can show success after success, people coming back to the city, coming back to the state, saying good things about it. Then they say, okay, well, this party delivered here. So now that party can build its brand to go on to the next level, the state and the federal level. So I think it's important.
All right, well, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages. If you need an attorney, call Romeo and Romeo PC at 315-422-4163. That's 315-422-4163.
We got Khalid.
All right, welcome back to Let's Talk. So yesterday, you, I, and a host of other people attended the funeral of what we all would qualify as a statesman, a person who did 18 years on the city council, not to mention a lifetime of public service. Our former council president, Van Robinson, was at his funeral yesterday.
Yeah.
And
I was there. It was great to see the turnout. It was a lot of old school, but also, you see the new council, you see the people that are thinking about getting into office. They knew to be there.
Yeah.
So it was a good mix, and it was a fitting tribute to Van. I considered him a friend first, and then someone you look up to. I came on the council, and he was already a leader of the community, and not being African American, he introduced me in a lot of ways to a lot of things and issues and so forth in the African American community, and we had a mutual respect for each other in that regard. And he was the I think he was the president of the NAACP here for a while.
He was.
I do remember. Let's tell you this: his wife, I think, Linda, wonderful person, who also became the president of the local chapter. Yeah. So she invited me on. So I have a card on NAACP. I'm there. I'm right down with it.
Yeah, that was certainly an unfortunate circumstance, but quite the reunion. In terms of the who's who of the political community in Syracuse, Central New York, including the governor. Was president. Senator Schumer on the video.
Letitia James came in.
Right, Tish James was
President Clinton, Bill Clinton, and his wife, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They both gave messages, video messages.
And you had Annette Robinson, the former Assemblywoman from Brooklyn, who was the head of COBIT, I believe was the name of it. And she made Van the vice president. Yeah. It was a statewide organization of legislators. They were all there. And so, decent amount of people. I'm sure we're forgetting. Obviously, we had a whole bunch of.
Yeah. Well, what's nice though, it's kind of like we have a thing here too, where the politicians get together every year for, like, they call it the spaghetti lunch, and you sit with everybody. It doesn't matter who you are,
right?
If you're Republican or Democrat or Independent or Conservative, whatever. But that was kind of like the funeral. I mean, there were Republicans there. There were every stripe. Every stripe was there, and for good reason, because Van treated people with respect, and he deserved the respect from others that he did get. And just a soft-spoken guy. He didn't get by with shouting and yelling and berating people. He was calm. It was good-natured, but he was also strong. And he had his viewpoints that he got across, and he got a lot done.
Fitting going home service for a great man and certainly a great leader. So,
family of Van, we're in our thoughts and prayers. We love you guys, and that's it.
All right, we'll be right back.
The Cleveland Browns select Sheduer Sanders, quarterback, Colorado.
Go, go.
Yeah, welcome back to Let's Talk. Khalid Bay.
This is Rob Romeo.
All right, so the NFL mini camps has been interesting, obviously, with all of the hype, despite whoever got drafted first or second round. The story has been about Sheduer Sanders the whole time.
Yeah.
Even in football, it has its own politics.
Not getting drafted. How about that? I mean, it just blows you away.
Well, he fifth round.
Fifth round.
And but right now appears to be, obviously there's a lot of commentary, but I watched the people who appear to be a lot more objective, I think.
Yeah.
And I've seen some videos, and I can tell you, to my knowledge, he didn't throw any interceptions. So,
like we were saying, I think he's going to walk into Cleveland, and he's going to take over. I think Cleveland is made a great pick there, and everybody else passed him up.
And they got him on the cheap.
Yeah, they got him on the cheap, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. Like a Tom Brady did when he came in. He's out to prove everybody wrong.
Right.
And he's got the talent to do it.
Yeah.
And I think they kept their what's their lineman's name? They kept.
I forget his name.
He was trying to get out, but they kept him. So Cleveland's going to be a team to deal with him.
I think so. I think people are writing them off a little much, assuming that they'll have a horrible season. I think they do better than they did last year. I don't expect them to
look at Jalen
win the AFC Championship.
Look at these guys coming into Washington. How good was Washington?
Washington made a turnaround just like that.
I think Shedeur has the possibility of turning that team around.
I think so.
I really do.
So
yeah.
What else was going on?
Well, the other one was last night was the NBA draft, and interesting. That where Cooper Kupp is first in line, I would think.
Yeah.
He's everybody's first choice. Who knows? Maybe he'll get a Shedeur. Pass him up. But I think and it goes to the Mavericks. It's kind of interesting. There's a theory out there. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a theory. So I don't want to spook anybody, but this is it came from my son. If anyone can blame him, he's so into everything. He knows everybody's name and number. I'm telling you. So the theory is that the league was suffering a little bit in LA because they just couldn't get out of their way, And the commissioner went to his guy, who we know real well at the Dallas Mavericks, and said, "You got to send Luka to LA
to wake it up.
You got to send him right now to LA to make this happen, because we need LA to be important to. It's important to
market.
It's important to the league.
Number two media market.
More than anything else, except for what? Maybe New York.
New York.
Yeah, New York. And then the deal is, somehow, some way, you'll get that first pick.
Wow.
Oh, is that I think he's called that a hot take.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
How about that?
It's not a stretch.
How about that?
It's not a stretch. LA has always been a big part of the NBA.
Conspiracy theories.
Other teams ebb and flow, but LA is always there. So it's why it is the franchise to play for.
You got to scratch your head. How do you get rid of Luka? How do you do it?
I don't understand how Dallas gets rid of Luka. And Luka clearly didn't understand.
He didn't understand. I mean, he gets called in the middle of the night. Go to LA tomorrow morning.
And it had to be big enough, so they traded Anthony Davis. Nothing else would be big enough to get him over there.
So you get the first pick, and guess who's coming?
Wow.
To you.
I don't know. That might be a good theory.
Yeah. What else is going on? My favorite show, Round the Horn, is going off the air. I don't understand it. You like that show? You ever watch?
I'm not familiar with Round.
Yeah, they're on at 5 o'clock, ESPN, every 5 o'clock, and you can know everything you need to know about sports. My daughter, she works at Microsoft, and she does sports marketing. But she was never into sports. Like my other daughter's into sports.
Yeah.
But this daughter didn't. But she is in sports marketing. She's one of her clients is Alpine, but she worked for the Chicago Bulls before, and so she knew all the basketball players on the team and everything. But so I said, listen, just watch PTI and Around the Horn every night, and you'll know what's going on. You'll be able to understand every league, every player, every foul ball, everything gets discussed in 1 hour twice, really.
Wow.
Just watch that. And so my daughter's like, okay, this will be a quick study in sports. Just watch those 2 shows.
Let us know your thoughts on everything we discussed so far, from the local elections all the way to the Cleveland debacle with their quarterbacks, to whether the theory in regards to why Luka Doncic ends up in LA.
That's a new one. You heard it here.
Yeah, let us know what you think. We'll be right
Okay.
back.
Okay.
Whether you need protection for your home, your auto, your business, or your family, Backworks Capital is your choice for insurance protection. Contact us today or visit us at www.backworkscapital.com. Welcome back to Let's Talk.
How we doing?
So, good. So just to close out, I'm going to reiterate the importance of a local election. And we were talking about the candidates, here in Syracuse, for example, who's running.
Yeah.
Make sure people are aware of who's running. Of course, you have the Deputy Mayor, Sharon Owens, who's a candidate. You have Councilor Pat Hogan, the President Pro Tem of the Council, who is the Democratic designee for the race. You have Choma Joke, who's an at-large councilor who's running for office. And, of course, the former budget director and former councilor, Tim Rudd, I believe is on the independent line. And not to mention our past guest, the Republican candidate, Tom Babylon, who's
That's right.
running for mayor.
Well, let's get them all on. I think we're going to plan on having each one do a little segment, right?
Right. We had Tom already.
Yeah. We'll get Pat Hogan, and Sharon's got to come on, and Tim. Why not? Let's do it. You said you got the independent line. You heard he got the line.
He got the
That's
line.
impressive to get those number of signatures to get your line. It's a lot of work. It shows a level of support. When you sign a petition, typically that means some support is there for you.
You got some votes out there.
You need a vote.
Yeah.
So give him credit. Give him credit for that. I mean,
I think it makes the election interesting. Pat Hogan winning the designation. It's interesting in itself. I think we're looking at a win number of maybe 4,000, 4,500 votes.
Yeah.
And the first one over 4,000, I think, wins the race. And so, obviously, in the primary, you only have 3 people on the ballot in the primary, and Choma Joke, Sharon Owens, and Pat Hogan.
Right.
And it's sometimes hard to decipher who the favorite is.
Yeah, I mean, it was shocking, the nomination process, to a lot of people, only because Sharon comes from, this administration this administration's done really well with the Democratic Party into election cycles, 2 4-year election cycles.
True.
She's done well, and she's right there with him, and I'm sure she got much of his support. But for Pat to come out and win that and kind of handle it. But that's, it's a weighted vote process. It's not exactly the same as the primary. The primary is going to shake out, the way it could be wholly different.
Yeah.
But right now it's and nobody can sit here and say they know who's going to win.
Right.
You just don't. Oh, and throw Tim Rudd into the general. It's just tough to say.
Yeah, we could certainly speculate, but we've done that in recent years. Probably post Mayor Matt Driscoll, the numbers have not been as telling as they have been in the past. They've been a little finicky, so the prediction has been a little bit more difficult since then.
And I know they're out there. The local media hosts a debate, so they've already had 1 or 2 already.
Yeah, one that I know
in
of.
the primary.
Syracuse.com
Series,
debate.
and I think there's another one coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, anybody that's running, they're people that have thrown their hat in the ring. They deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah.
They're not like professional politicians that know how to do this every day, so they're learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to debate on camera,
No, you learn that when you get there.
So I give them a lot of credit to stand up there and tell their side, and get their viewpoints across, answer the questions that come their way. Just all positive stuff to those people, and I think that they deserve the respect of the community to pay attention, and then to do the next thing is to vote.
I think that's the very important thing in regards to community involvement. The total indifference that you see across the board, regardless of demographic, the indifference that people have to government right now is alarming and a little dangerous. And I always use the example of, the person who drives through the fast food drive-through pays for their food, but then drives away without the food, right? And this is the equivalent of people who pays all this money into government. Everybody pays for this operation.
I know you like that, and that's a good way to look at
And
it.
so to not follow your funds
Yeah.
is reckless.
Right.
It's reckless. And so, you have to make a demand for how the money is used, but be informed enough
Yeah.
so that your demands make
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, right from the beginning of this country, they said you have to, in order for a democracy to survive and do well, you have to have an engaged citizenry that understands, it's knowledgeable, and you have to guard against, not being knowledgeable, and guard against misinformation, and guard against apathy.
Right.
If you
right.
if you have those things, you're going to lose your democracy.
That's right.
And then you lose your government. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to have enough respect to know that your government keeps you. It's like an old thing. It's the same with the police. That thin blue line.
Yeah.
Whether obviously there are excesses. Obviously there are abuses. Obviously
Yeah.
there are things there's some level of incompetency at
Right.
all levels of all professions.
In every profession, there's a screw up.
Right.
That's right.
So, but when you have an institution like the police department, part of government, it really, we
Yeah.
pay for that police
That's
department.
right.
They are the thin blue line that keeps people safe.
Yeah.
And that is, the thing. So you have to respect it, and you have to be engaged, and you have to work hard to get the right people, so you get, you lessen the opportunity for incompetence and, corruption.
It's tough, and you get the reason for a lot of the disconnect and the pessimism, to the point about the thin blue line, right? Police, the known requirement to protect and serve, but obviously in recent years it hasn't appeared that way in some respects to some people. And at the same time, I always say, nobody likes the police until you need them.
Exactly.
And it's just
Exactly.
you kind of always have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Everybody loves the fire department because nobody wants their house to burn down, right? So but these services we pay for. I will say this: in most communities of color, especially economically challenged communities, their only real experience with government is the police department.
Right.
And if they have a disconnect with the police department, then as far as they're concerned, government has no meaning to them.
But there's also a thing that, people that community that you're describing, they also have the most need, but also the most respect for the police as well.
Mm-hmm.
They do have the respect for the police, but it's like it gets overshadowed.
Yeah, it does.
It gets overshadowed by when you have the disconnect.
Yeah.
Or disruption in the community.
Right. That's for sure. Especially since it's usually the communities in closer proximity.
I mean,
so they have more.
some moms that go to church. Do they not have respect for the police?
Yeah, I know moms who don't go to church that have respect. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, more people have respect than people know. It's just that, just like the clickbait and news sites and the like, the negative draws all the attention.
Exactly. No problem. No question.
And it's the same in politics. I always say that it's hard to see authenticity amidst the blur.
Yeah. And the other thing about, which I don't like about politicians, if they get to be this way, is they exploit differences.
Yeah.
That's the problem. When you don't recognize that there's respect there, but you exploit the
negative.
The negative.
That's right.
Then it divides communities. It divides, groups and peoples, and that's really unfair, and that's a disservice to the office, the governance, and then our community suffers.
See, that's why we say don't ever fall for the okie doke. All right. So but leave your comments. Let us know your thoughts on the subject matter. Rob, any final words before we close?
June 14th, I think it's early voting for the primaries.
Yep.
Let's make a plan, as they say. Get out there and vote.
Get out there and vote.
Find the beauty and grace in voting.
That's right.
All right,
babe.
That's it, Rob Romeo.
That's on the next one.